Hey, welcome to YSR Shorts. What's a trust? I get that question a lot. What's a trust? And what people mean is something very specific. And I know it's a question I get often enough. I know what they're really asking. But let's take a step back and say, well, what is a trust? A trust is a legal entity that's a non-person. It just sounds weird, doesn't it? It's almost like a corporation, but it's not incorporated. It's created by an individual or a small group of people for a very specific purpose. And there are a multitude of different types of trusts out there. My dad was a riot growing up. As I was going through college and learning all of this stuff, and then I slowly went into my own business doing this. He worked at a trust company and in Boston, a very private, very prestigious trust company. And you're learning about the grits, grats, and gruts, and the crits, crats, and cruts, and those are six different acronymic trusts out there. There's grantor trust, charitable trust. There's all sorts of different trusts. There's revocable, there's irrevocable. We'll talk about that in a minute. But when people ask, what's a trust or should I have a trust? They're talking about what's called a revocable living trust. What does that mean? So it's a trust you create during your lifetime. That's what makes it living. It's not the trust is living, it's your living, as opposed to a testamentary trust is a trust that's created after your death, usually through your will. Um, a living trust is something created during your lifetime. It is revocable by you and you alone, or if you're a married couple, by the two of you. And it outlines what will happen to your property, A, during your lifetime, and primarily this is managed for our benefit, and then B, after your death. And that's the real key, is it says all of the assets within this trust will be managed in such a way. This person will get this much, this person will get this much. We want this to be set aside for here, all of that. It looks an awful lot like a will. My gosh, if you held a will and a trust together side by side and really looked at it, there's a section that appoints the person in charge when you're no longer here. It's either called a personal representative in a will, or it used to be called an executor. It's called a trustee in a trust. It outlines the rules that they have to follow. Okay. It outlines the rules that everything else has to follow. Okay. Then it's got a beneficiary statement. I want this to happen. They both have both of them. The trust is probably maybe double the size, sometimes triple the size, depending on complexity. But effectively, they do the same thing. So why have a trust? Well, as you probably suspect, number one, and if you missed the last short, you probably want to jump back and listen to that as well. It's a couple minutes long. What is probate? The primary reason people will draft a living trust, revocable living trust, is to avoid probate. Probate is a very cumbersome process, even though it's simplified in the last several years. It still is a very cumbersome process. It's time consuming, it can be very expensive, and it's very public. A living trust, because the trust owns the assets, you don't own the assets anymore, is the assets are owned by the trust. And I'll talk about how that happens in a second. Because the trust itself owns those assets, when you pass away, there's no probate because there's no assets that are held in your name. The trust, that non-person tax entity that now exists, owns those, and it's the new trustee of that trust that decides how everything's divided. So we avoid the cost, the complexity, and the publicity of the probate process. Uh, it also allows us to avoid a lot of the time consuming and costly situations. So for instance, if I'm dealing with a probate issue right now with two pieces of property and I'll have to probate two separate estates, probably take about 6 months before those two properties can be put even on the market. I'll have to wait probably a month after that for them to be placed into their trust. Oh, by the way, this couple had a trust and didn't put either property into the trust. Um, and then the heirs can go about and through the trustee sell the properties. Versus if those properties were in trust immediately, a week later you'll have a death certificate and you're the new trustee of the trust and you can do whatever you want. It takes a state settlement to weeks instead of months to years. It can. A lot of times we want to go a little bit slower than that, but it can settle an estate very, very quickly. Now, how do we put assets inside the trust? We just change the name. So if you own a home, you deed the home to yourself as trustee of the Your Name Here trust. That's it. Property tax bill still comes to you. You got to pay for all the repairs. Effectively, everything is still yours. But when you pass away, it makes it such that um, the new trustee can step in immediately. Same thing with investment accounts or bank accounts, is you'll go into the bank or contact your investment firm and say, look, I need to move my account that's in my name or joint name between me and my spouse into a trust account. And they'll ask for the trust documents, probably usually the first page and the signature page. And they will just change the name and it'll say your name, comma, TTEE, trustee, your name here, trust. It's still yours. It still goes on your tax return. Nothing changes during your lifetime, but it allows us to avoid that probate process. It also allows us to use that one document to act as quarterback of all of your assets. If you think about it, if everything pours into that one trust, if I need to make a change, I want to add my grandchildren, or I want to give more money to my grandchildren, or less money to my grandchildren, or, favor one child over another for whatever reason, I'm making a change in one document, and that document's the trust. Last thing it can do for married couples in certain circumstances, if you are subject to either federal or state estate taxes, it can actually help you mitigate that as well. So those are the basics. If you have questions, jump down in the show notes, reach out. We'll see if we can help. Stay safe out there.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Remember, the views expressed are not necessarily those of Successful Money Strategies. All content is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as an endorsement of any third party or their views, or as a solicitation or offer to sell securities or provide investment, tax, legal, or consulting services. We believe the information presented to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed for accuracy or completeness. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Hypothetical returns do not reflect actual trading and may not be indicative of the performance of any specific investment. Always consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Additional information, including management fees and expenses, is provided on our Form ADV Part 2, available upon request, or at the SEC's Investment Advisor Public Disclosure website, https://advisorinfo.sec.gov.